Chapter 9. The Habsburg Empire, from the Holy Roman Empire to Austria-Hungary. The Habsburg dynasty is one of the most prominent in European history, and its rise to power was nothing short of remarkable. It all began in the late Middle Ages, when a noble family of counts from the region of Aargau in modern-day Switzerland began to acquire lands and titles across Central Europe. Over the course of several centuries, the Habsburgs would rise to become one of the most powerful ruling families in the world. The early history of the Habsburgs is shrouded in mystery, but it is generally believed that their ancestors were members of the old Swabian aristocracy. The family's fortunes began to rise in the 12th century, when Werner II of Habsburg became the first Habsburg count. Over the next several centuries, the Habsburgs would steadily acquire more and more territories, gaining control over vast swaths of Central Europe. One of the key figures in the Habsburgs' rise to power was Rudolf IV of Habsburg, who became Duke of Austria in 1358. Rudolf was a brilliant strategist and administrator, and he was instrumental in consolidating the family's holdings in Austria and beyond. Under Rudolf's leadership, the Habsburgs gained control over much of the territory that is now modern-day Austria, as well as parts of Hungary, Slovenia, and Croatia. Another important figure in the Habsburgs' rise was Maximilian I, who became Holy Roman Emperor in 1508. Maximilian was a master diplomat and military commander, and he played a major role in expanding the Habsburgs' territories and influence. He married Mary of Burgundy, the heiress to the powerful Burgundian duchy, which brought the Habsburgs vast new lands in the Low Countries. He also waged a number of successful military campaigns against the Ottomans and other powers, further expanding Habsburg power. The Habsburgs continued to grow in strength and prestige over the next several centuries, cementing their position as one of Europe's most powerful and influential dynasties. They continued to acquire new lands and titles, and by the 16th century they controlled a vast empire that stretched from Spain to Hungary. They were patrons of the arts and sciences, and their court in Vienna was a hub of intellectual and cultural activity. Perhaps the most famous Habsburg ruler was Charles V, who ruled from 1519 to 1556. Charles was one of the most powerful men in European history, and he played a major role in shaping the political and religious landscape of the continent. He was a staunch defender of the Catholic Church, and he waged a number of wars against the Protestant Reformation. He was also a patron of the arts, and his court was home to some of the greatest artists and thinkers of the era. Despite their many successes, the Habsburgs were not without their challenges. They faced constant threats from other powerful dynasties, and they struggled to maintain control over their vast empire. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the family began to decline in power as other nations rose to prominence and new political ideologies emerged. Nevertheless, the Habsburgs remained one of the most important and influential dynasties in European history, and their legacy can still be felt today. In conclusion, the rise of the Habsburgs from a minor Swiss noble family to one of the most powerful dynasties in Europe is a testament to their ambition, skill, and tenacity. Over the course of several centuries, they acquired vast territories, built a powerful empire, and left an indelible mark on European culture and politics. The 30 Years' War was one of the most devastating conflicts in European history, lasting from 1618 to 1648. It began as a religious conflict between Protestants and Catholics in the Holy Roman Empire, but it quickly became a political and dynastic struggle for power. The war involved many European powers, including France, Sweden, Denmark, and Spain, and it resulted in the deaths of millions of people. The origins of the 30 Years' War can be traced back to the religious divisions in Europe that began with the Protestant Reformation. In the early 17th century, the Holy Roman Empire was a patchwork of states with a complex web of allegiances and obligations. The empire was ruled by an emperor, who was elected by a council of princes. The emperor was responsible for maintaining order and defending the empire from external threats. In 1618, the conflict between Protestants and Catholics in the empire came to a head. The Protestant nobles of Bohemia, who were unhappy with the policies of the Catholic Habsburg rulers, rebelled and formed the Bohemian Estates. The Catholic Habsburgs, led by Ferdinand II, responded by sending an army to crush the rebellion. The Bohemians were defeated, and Ferdinand was elected emperor in 1619. The war soon spread beyond Bohemia, as other Protestant states in the empire joined the conflict. The Catholic powers of Europe, including Spain and the Holy Roman Empire, supported Ferdinand, while the Protestant powers, such as Sweden and Denmark, supported the rebels. The conflict became increasingly complex as other European powers, such as France, became involved for political and strategic reasons. The war was characterized by a series of brutal battles and sieges, as well as atrocities committed by both sides. The most notorious of these was the sack of Magdeburg in 1631, in which Swedish troops sacked and burned the city, killing thousands of civilians. The turning point of the war came with the entry of Sweden into the conflict in 1630, led by King Gustavus Adolphus. The Swedish army was highly effective, using innovative tactics and technology, such as the use of artillery and muskets. Gustavus Adolphus won several important battles and laid siege to many key cities. However, in 1632, Gustavus Adolphus was killed at the Battle of Lutzen, and the Swedish army suffered a major defeat. Despite this setback, the war continued for another 16 years. It finally came to an end with the Peace of Westphalia in 1648. This treaty recognized the independence of the Netherlands and Switzerland, and granted limited religious freedoms to Protestants in the Holy Roman Empire. The 30 Years' War was a devastating conflict, with an estimated 8 million people dying as a result. It had a profound impact on the political, religious, and cultural landscape of Europe. It marked the end of the Habsburgs' dominance in the Holy Roman Empire, and paved the way for the rise of new powers such as France and Sweden. The war also had a lasting impact on the way wars were fought, as it demonstrated the effectiveness of new military technology and tactics. In popular culture, the 30 Years' War has been the subject of many books, plays, and films. The war has been portrayed as a tragic and senseless conflict, with innocent civilians caught in the middle of political and religious struggles. The 30 Years' War remains a powerful reminder of the dangers of religious and political extremism, and of the devastating consequences of war. Maria Theresa and the Habsburg succession crisis. Maria Theresa, born on May 13, 1717, was the eldest daughter of Holy Roman Emperor Charles VI and his wife Elizabeth Christine of Brunswick-Wolfenbüttel. The Habsburg dynasty, which had been in power for centuries, was facing a succession crisis as Charles VI had no male heirs. In order to prevent the fragmentation of the empire and preserve the Habsburg rule, he promulgated the Pragmatic Sanction of 1713, which declared that his eldest daughter would inherit all his lands and titles. Maria Theresa was only 23 years old when her father died in October 1740, leaving her to face the daunting task of ruling the vast Habsburg Empire. Her inheritance was immediately challenged by a number of European powers, most notably Frederick II of Prussia, who saw an opportunity to expand his own territory. In December 1740, he invaded Silesia, a province that belonged to the Habsburgs, and kicked off the War of the Austrian Succession. The early years of the war were marked by a series of setbacks for Maria Theresa and the Habsburgs. Frederick II won a number of battles and was able to annex Silesia. However, Maria Theresa was able to secure the support of Great Britain, which saw the Habsburgs as a counterbalance to the rising power of Prussia. The British sent troops to the continent, and their intervention turned the tide of the war. Maria Theresa proved to be an adept ruler, working tirelessly to strengthen the Habsburg Empire and implement a series of reforms. She reformed the administration of the empire, abolished serfdom, and introduced a new legal code. She also worked to improve the infrastructure of the empire, building roads and canals and encouraging trade and commerce. One of Maria Theresa's most significant achievements was the education of her children. She believed that the future of the Habsburg dynasty depended on the education and upbringing of her heirs, and she spared no expense in providing them with the best education possible. Her children were taught by the leading thinkers of the day, and were exposed to a wide range of disciplines, including science, philosophy, and the arts. Maria Theresa's reign was also marked by significant cultural achievements. She was a patron of the arts and supported a number of artists and musicians, including Mozart, Haydn, and Gluck. Vienna, the capital of the empire, became a center of culture and refinement, attracting artists, writers, and intellectuals from across Europe. Maria Theresa died on November 29, 1780, at the age of 63. She had ruled the Habsburg Empire for over 40 years, and had successfully navigated the succession crisis and the War of the Austrian Succession. Her legacy as a ruler and a reformer was significant, and her children went on to rule over some of the most powerful European empires of the 18th and 19th centuries. The Habsburg monarchy was one of the most powerful empires in European history, and its influence extended far beyond its borders. One of its most significant challenges was dealing with the Ottoman Empire, a powerful and expansionist Islamic state that threatened to dominate much of Europe. The Habsburgs and the Ottomans had a complex relationship that was marked by both conflict and cooperation. For much of the 16th and 17th centuries, the two empires were locked in a series of wars that often saw the Habsburgs on the defensive. The Ottomans were a formidable enemy, with a highly trained army and a vast territory that stretched from Eastern Europe to the Middle East. The Habsburgs, on the other hand, were a relatively small state that was surrounded by hostile powers, including the Ottomans, France, and the various German states. Despite these challenges, the Habsburgs were able to hold their own against the Ottomans, thanks to their military strength and strategic alliances. In particular, they were able to draw on the support of other European powers, such as Poland and Venice, which helped to check the Ottoman advance. Additionally, the Habsburgs were able to leverage their position as the leading Catholic power in Europe to gain the support of the Pope, who often saw the Ottoman Empire as a threat to Christendom. One of the key moments in the Habsburg-Ottoman relationship was the Siege of Vienna in 1683, when the Ottomans launched a massive assault on the Habsburg capital. The siege was a turning point in the conflict between the two empires, as it marked the first time that the Ottomans had been defeated in a major military campaign. The victory at Vienna was due in large part to the leadership of the Polish king, Jan III Sobieski, who led a coalition of European forces to break the Ottoman siege. The victory at Vienna was a major turning point in European history and helped to secure the Habsburgs' position as one of the leading powers on the continent. Despite this victory, the Habsburgs continued to face threats from the Ottomans in the following centuries. However, by the 18th century, the Ottoman Empire was in decline, and the Habsburgs were able to assert their dominance in Eastern Europe. In particular, the reign of Maria Theresa marked a significant shift in the Habsburg-Ottoman relationship, as the Habsburgs were able to gain control of much of Hungary and Transylvania. Overall, the relationship between the Habsburgs and the Ottomans was complex and marked by both cooperation and conflict. Despite the military challenges that they faced, the Habsburgs were able to hold their own against the Ottomans, thanks to their strategic alliances, military strength, and religious leadership. Today, the legacy of this relationship can be seen in the cultural and architectural heritage of Central Europe, which reflects the influence of both the Habsburgs and the Ottomans. The Congress of Vienna was a watershed event in the history of Europe. It was held from 1814 to 1815, after the defeat of Napoleon Bonaparte in 1813, with the aim of reorganizing the continent and restoring order after years of war and revolution. The Congress was attended by the great powers of Europe, including Austria, Prussia, Russia, and Great Britain, as well as representatives from smaller states and principalities. The Congress was dominated by the Austrian Chancellor, Prince Clemens von Metternich, who was committed to maintaining the status quo and preserving the power of the traditional monarchies of Europe. The Congress was thus marked by a conservative, reactionary agenda, which aimed to roll back the gains of the French Revolution and restore the old order. At the Congress, the great powers of Europe engaged in a complex series of negotiations and compromises, with the aim of redrawing the map of Europe and settling outstanding territorial disputes. One of the key issues that emerged was the future of Poland, which had been partitioned by its neighbors in the late 18th century. The Congress restored Polish independence, but under a constitutional monarchy that was subservient to Russia. Another issue was the balance of power in Europe, which had been upset by the rise of Napoleon. The Congress aimed to restore a balance of power, with no one state dominating the others. This was achieved through a series of territorial adjustments and the creation of a system of alliances and treaties. One of the most important outcomes of the Congress was the creation of the German Confederation, which united the various German states under the leadership of Austria. This was an attempt to create a stable and unified Germany, but it was also a recognition of the growing power and influence of Prussia. The Congress also marked the beginning of a new era of European politics, which was characterized by diplomacy, negotiation, and the pursuit of balance and stability. It was the start of a system of international relations that would shape the continent for the next century and beyond. The Congress of Vienna had a profound impact on the world, and its legacy is still felt today. It established a new framework for international relations, based on the principles of balance and stability. It also set the stage for the rise of nationalism and the emergence of new states in Europe, which would eventually lead to the outbreak of World War I. The Congress was a turning point in European history, and it remains an important moment in the history of the world. Franz Joseph I was the longest reigning monarch of the Habsburg dynasty, ruling from 1848 to 1916. His reign spanned a period of immense change and turmoil in Europe, as the continent underwent a wave of revolutions, nationalistic movements, and rapid industrialization. Born in 1830, Franz Joseph ascended to the throne at the age of 18, following the abdication of his uncle, Ferdinand I, in the wake of the revolutions of 1848. Franz Joseph inherited a sprawling and diverse empire that encompassed a wide range of ethnic and linguistic groups, including Austrians, Hungarians, Czechs, Poles, and Italians, among others. This made governance of the empire a challenging task, and Franz Joseph's reign was marked by frequent political crises and uprisings. One of the defining features of Franz Joseph's reign was his commitment to maintaining the unity and stability of the Habsburg Empire. He believed that the only way to achieve this was through centralization and a strong authoritarian government. Franz Joseph implemented a number of reforms designed to modernize the empire and increase its efficiency, including the creation of a centralized bureaucracy and the establishment of a uniform legal system. In addition to his domestic policies, Franz Joseph also played a major role in European politics during the latter half of the 19th century. He was a staunch opponent of Prussian expansionism and played a key role in the formation of the Triple Alliance between Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. He also worked to maintain Austria's influence in the Balkans, an area that was becoming increasingly volatile and contested. Despite his efforts to maintain the unity of the empire, Franz Joseph's reign was plagued by political and social unrest. The rise of nationalism in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, combined with economic and social inequality, created widespread discontent among many of the empire's subjects. This led to a series of crises and uprisings, including the Hungarian Revolution of 1848, the Czech National Revival, and the Bosnian Crisis of 1908. Despite these challenges, Franz Joseph was widely respected as a symbol of stability and continuity during a time of great change. His long reign was marked by a deep commitment to duty and a strong sense of responsibility to his people. While his authoritarian approach to governance was often criticized, he remained a respected figure both at home and abroad. In conclusion, Franz Joseph I was a major figure in the history of the Habsburg dynasty and the broader history of Europe. His reign was marked by a commitment to centralization and stability, as well as a dedication to maintaining the unity of the diverse and complex Habsburg Empire. Although his reign was marked by political and social unrest, he remained a symbol of stability and continuity during a time of great change and upheaval. The Austro-Prussian War, also known as the 7 Weeks' War, was a conflict that took place in 1866 between the Austrian Empire and the Kingdom of Prussia. The war marked a turning point in European history, as it not only led to the decline of the Habsburg Empire, but also laid the foundation for the eventual unification of Germany. In the mid-19th century, the Habsburg Empire was in decline, with economic problems, ethnic tensions, and political instability threatening its survival. At the same time, Prussia, under the leadership of Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, was emerging as a powerful and aggressive player in European politics. The immediate cause of the war was a dispute over the administration of the German Confederation, a loose association of German states dominated by Austria. Bismarck, who sought to increase Prussia's influence over the Confederation, proposed a series of reforms that would have reduced Austria's power. When the Austrian Empire refused to accept these reforms, Prussia declared war. The war was brief but intense, with the Prussian army winning several decisive victories over the poorly led Austrian forces. One of the most significant battles was the Battle of Königgrätz, which took place on July 3, 1866. In this battle, the Prussian army, led by General Helmuth von Moltke, defeated the Austrian army, led by Field Marshal Ludwig von Benedek, in a single day of fighting. The war ended with the Treaty of Prague, which forced Austria to cede control of several territories to Prussia, including Schleswig-Holstein, Hanover, and several smaller states. The treaty also dissolved the German Confederation and established a new North German Confederation, which was dominated by Prussia. The Austro-Prussian War had significant implications for the future of Europe. It marked the end of the Habsburg Empire as a major European power and paved the way for the eventual unification of Germany under Prussian leadership. It also demonstrated the importance of modern military tactics and technology, as the Prussian army's use of railroads and breech-loading rifles played a key role in its success. In conclusion, the Austro-Prussian War was a pivotal moment in European history, one that set the stage for the unification of Germany and the emergence of Prussia as a dominant power in the region. The war also marked the beginning of the end for the Habsburg Empire, which would continue to decline over the course of the 19th century. The dual monarchy, also known as Austria-Hungary, was a complex state that emerged in 1867 as a result of a political compromise between the Austrian Empire and the Kingdom of Hungary. It was a unique and innovative arrangement that sought to balance the interests of the two nations and manage the diverse ethnic and cultural groups that made up the empire. The origins of the dual monarchy can be traced back to the mid-19th century, when nationalist movements began to emerge in both Austria and Hungary. In Austria, there was a growing desire among German-speaking liberals to create a more democratic and centralized state. In Hungary, there was a similar movement among Magyar nationalists, who sought greater autonomy and control over their own affairs. These tensions came to a head in the aftermath of the Austro-Hungarian Compromise of 1867, which created the dual monarchy. Under this new system, Austria and Hungary became separate states, each with their own parliament, government, and monarch. The two states were united under a common ruler, Emperor Franz Joseph I, who was also the King of Hungary. The dual monarchy was a complex system that attempted to balance the interests of both nations while also managing the diverse ethnic and cultural groups that made up the empire. The empire was made up of a number of different territories, including Bohemia, Galicia, Croatia, Transylvania, and others. Each of these territories had its own distinct language, culture, and traditions. One of the main challenges facing the dual monarchy was managing the diverse ethnic and cultural groups that made up the empire. The Magyar elite in Hungary dominated the government and sought to impose their language and culture on the other groups in the empire. This led to tensions with other groups, particularly the Czechs and the Slovaks, who felt marginalized and oppressed by the Magyars. Despite these challenges, the dual monarchy was able to maintain a degree of stability and prosperity for several decades. Under Franz Joseph's long reign, the empire enjoyed a period of economic growth and cultural flowering, with Vienna becoming a center of art, music, and literature. The empire also played a major role in European politics, particularly in the lead up to World War I. However, the dual monarchy ultimately proved to be unsustainable. The tensions between Austria and Hungary, as well as the various ethnic and cultural groups within the empire, proved too great to overcome. The empire was further weakened by the rise of nationalist movements throughout Europe, which ultimately led to its collapse following World War I. Despite its eventual demise, the dual monarchy left a lasting legacy on Europe. Its innovative system of government, which sought to balance the interests of different nations and ethnic groups, provided a model for other multi-ethnic states. The empire's cultural achievements, particularly in Vienna, continue to be celebrated to this day. However, the legacy of the dual monarchy is also marked by its failures, particularly its inability to manage the diverse and competing interests of the various groups within the empire. The Habsburg Empire was one of the most powerful and diverse empires in history, but its multi-ethnic makeup was a constant source of tension and instability. Nowhere was this more apparent than in the Balkans, where a series of wars in the early 20th century eventually led to the empire's collapse. The Balkan Wars were fought between 1912 and 1913, with the aim of ousting the Ottoman Empire from its remaining territories in Europe. This was a significant moment for the Balkans, as the region had been under Ottoman rule for centuries. The Balkan states, Serbia, Montenegro, Greece, and Bulgaria, were all newly independent and eager to expand their borders. The First Balkan War began in October 1912, with Serbia and Montenegro declaring war on the Ottoman Empire. Bulgaria and Greece soon joined the conflict, and within weeks the Ottoman Empire had lost almost all its territory in Europe. The Second Balkan War followed a few months later as Bulgaria, dissatisfied with its share of the spoils, launched a surprise attack on Serbia and Greece. The resulting conflict was short but bloody, and ended with Bulgaria losing most of its gains from the First Balkan War. The Balkan Wars had a profound impact on the Habsburg Empire. Austria-Hungary was seen as a guarantor of Ottoman stability, and the empire had significant economic and strategic interests in the Balkans. The wars shattered the balance of power in the region and created a power vacuum that was soon filled by new states and alliances. The Habsburg Empire was forced to confront the reality that its influence in the Balkans was rapidly declining. The impact of the Balkan Wars was also felt in Serbia, where a new generation of political leaders emerged. One of the most prominent was Gavrilo Princip, who assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary in Sarajevo in 1914. This event triggered a chain of events that led to the outbreak of World War I and the eventual collapse of the Habsburg Empire. The Balkan Wars were a turning point for the Habsburg Empire, as they exposed the weaknesses of the empire's multi-ethnic makeup and the challenges of maintaining a diverse and cohesive state. The wars also showed that the balance of power in Europe was shifting, and that the Habsburg Empire was no longer the dominant force it once was. The collapse of the Habsburg Empire after World War I was a direct result of these challenges, and the legacy of the Balkan Wars can still be seen in the political and cultural landscape of the region today. The Habsburg Empire was one of the most powerful and enduring dynasties in European history. Beginning as a small county in modern-day Switzerland, the Habsburgs rose to become one of the most powerful empires in the world. The Habsburg legacy is one that is not only defined by military conquests and political power, but also by art, culture, and the advancement of human rights. At the height of their power, the Habsburgs controlled an empire that stretched from modern-day Belgium to Romania, and from Italy to Ukraine. They ruled over a diverse population that spoke many different languages and practiced many different religions. Despite these challenges, the Habsburgs maintained their grip on power for centuries, building a political and cultural legacy that still resonates today. The Habsburgs were great patrons of the arts and culture, and their empire was home to some of the greatest artists, writers, and musicians of the time. The courts of Vienna and Prague were centers of artistic and intellectual innovation, and the Habsburgs were enthusiastic patrons of the arts. Some of the most famous artists of the time, such as Gustav Klimt and Egon Schiele, were supported by the Habsburgs, and the great composers Mozart, Beethoven, and Brahms all worked for the Habsburg court. In addition to their artistic legacy, the Habsburgs also played a pivotal role in shaping the modern world. They were one of the first dynasties to recognize the importance of human rights and equality, and they made great strides towards ensuring that all citizens were treated fairly and justly. The Habsburg Empire was also one of the first to recognize the importance of education, and they invested heavily in creating a robust system of public schools that would help to prepare future generations for success. Despite their many achievements, the Habsburgs also faced many challenges, particularly as their empire grew more diverse and complex. Their struggle to maintain control over their vast empire ultimately contributed to their downfall, and the Habsburg Empire dissolved in the early 20th century. Nevertheless, the legacy of the Habsburgs lives on, and their contributions to art, culture, and politics continue to be celebrated and remembered. The Habsburg Empire may be long gone, but its influence on the world will never be forgotten.